12 Americans that are going to go into a room, they're going to sit down, and they're going to decide the fate of Donald Trump.
This is a giant witch hunt to try and hurt a campaign that's beating the worst president in history.
That jury needs to be monitored to come down to a clear and concise verdict. Well, tonight we're talking about a highly unprecedented legal case. This affects all of us. A president and a candidate for the presidency has never been criminally brought to trial.
Today was one for the history books. It marks the first time that a former president goes on trial for criminal charges.
This is a giant witch hunt to try and hurt a campaign that's beating the worst president in history.
State felony charges filed last year in New York allege he falsified business records to cover up a hush money payment to adult film actress Stormy Daniels, trying to stop her from going public about an alleged affair just days before the 2016 presidential election.
Paying hush money is not a crime. The DA is alleging that the records were falsified to cover up another crime, that being election interference. And that's what makes the misdemeanor into felonies.
Trump has pleaded not guilty to all charges.
More than half of the first 96 jurors told the judge they couldn't be impartial.
Very simple. Everything you heard of that, this is a witch hunt.
The judge will work through lots and lots of jurors to find people who can express a genuine willingness to look at the facts of this case and judge the evidence that's presented by the prosecution.
There's great significance to this trial because Donald Trump could be elected president again.
If convicted, Trump could face up to 4 years in a New York State prison.
I want to talk about the jury, and I want to talk about what I consider to be the forgotten jury. Because if you look across all the media, what you're hearing is this lawyer's arguing this lawyer's arguing that. Here's what the judge is saying, this is what the law is, this is what the theories are. But you know what? This case is going to be problem solved by 12 Americans. 12 Americans that are going to go into a room, they're going to sit down, and they're going to decide the fate of Donald Trump, current candidate for President of the United States. And how they problem solve that doesn't have to be a mystery. This is something that can be known. And I've spent a lot of my professional career doing just that kind of work. But let's talk about what is at stake here. If the verdict comes in guilty against Donald Trump, what are the scenarios that we need to be considering? First, he faces up to 4 years in prison. I'm talking about how we get to that outcome and what the impact would be. If Donald Trump is convicted and faces 4 years in prison, the scenarios are these. If he were to win the election, and that could happen because you can be convicted of a felony and still be elected president and serve as president. You can't necessarily vote if you're a convicted felon from prison, but you can serve as president from prison. The inauguration would have to happen from prison. He would have to entertain heads of state from prison. He would have to have staff meetings in prison. He would have to actually do his job as president, maybe from Rikers Island in the beginning, then from some prison in New York. And one of the things that I'm very concerned about is that this jury seems to have been forgotten. Now, are jury consultants involved in this? There appears to be some help being rendered, but I can tell you in all the time that I did this, there was a much more active role than what appears to be happening right now, because how jurors problem solve these things, how they get to a verdict is a very active and ongoing process. And here's what I mean by that. There might be 1,000 facts in this case, but out of that 1,000 facts, there might be 10, 12, or 15 that in a proper configuration are going to be what determines how the jury comes down on this case. What are those 10 or 12 facts? How are they needing to be presented? What does the jury need to understand in order to come to a clear decision on this case? That may change across time. That jury needs to be monitored. You need to find out how they're understanding this case. What do they need to understand about this case to come down to a clear and concise verdict?